Now therefore I, Mike Bush, Mayor of the City of Hot Springs, Arkansas, on behalf of our Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim April 6, 2009 as Don A. Grisham Day in Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas.
And now we'd like to hear from our honoree today, Mr. Don Grisham.
I've been on cloud nine ever since I learned about this, and I just want to thank, and so many people I couldn't possibly get the name, but I certainly want to thank the selection committee. I want to thank Tom. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Eric Jackson and all the people at Oak Cloud and Terry Wallace. I want to thank our leading writer, Terry Thompson's here today. And it's just so great to look out among you. And I'm saying, there's people, I couldn't have made it as a racing farm rider if it hadn't been for a lot of you people that really helped me along the way. Like some problem would come up in racing and I need to learn more about, I could go to Bob Holtis or I could go to Eric Jackson and they would fill me in. And you really need these people. And you can always go to Oak Cliff, you need a doctor, a dentist, or a lawyer. They'd point you in the right direction. And it's just a tremendous game. I know that I went to Henderson. I'd like to thank all the people from Henderson that's here today. There's a lady, of course, she's deceased now, Nanny McRoney was my faculty advisor. And one day she was sitting on a campus bench, so I sat down beside her and she said, "How old are you, Mr.?" She always called me Mr. Grisham. She said, "How old are you, Mr. Grisham?" And I said, "Well, I'm 26. I said, "I served time in the Air Force before I got here." And so I was a 22-year-old freshman. And she said, "What are your plans for the future?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to work for the racing farm. I'd like to be a writer for the racing farm, but, you know, it's kind of closed corporation. It's kind of difficult to get to know." And she said, "Well, you've got to try." She says, success doesn't depend on age, it doesn't depend on anything. But says, it's never too old, you're never too young. Said, you just got to start now. Said, "Have you sent in a resume?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, I'll write you a letter." And so we picked up the resume. And several years later, I was in New York. I was working for the racing farm, and I was down undergoing a training period. And Saul Rosen, the editor, publisher, came up, and he said, "We're sure glad we hired you." He says, "You know what the selling point was?" And I said, "No." He said, "You had the nicest letter." And your resume said from Miss Roney. Said she was one of your teachers. And so, but those of you at Henderson here, you know, I'm really proud of Miss Roney. She's been long gone, but she's one of those people. And Rosen said, "You know," says, "how many teachers do you have, say, from kindergarten to the first grade to you getting your degree?" And I said, "I don't know, 60, 65. And he said, "Well, you're right," said, "but probably just one or two or three will really change the course of your life." And certainly Miss Roman is going to change the course of my life. And looking out over the people here, I said, I couldn't have made it without this person. I couldn't have made it without this person. Mr. and Mrs. Glass are here today. I haven't bought or sold stock in 25 years. I haven't called Mr. Glass. And what do you think? And so as I say, around the racetrack, you can always get a lot of information. Frank, I guess Ben Jones, who's probably the greatest trainer ever lived, gave me my teacher last. I can still say it word for word. Whirlaway was my number one horse. BJ, when we were riding a bicycle around, I was 13, and we all had heroes. Joe DiMaggio was one guy's hero, and Longfellow, the old Cleveland Indian pitcher, was another. Stan Musier was another. My hero was Whirlaway. You guys would say, "Whirlaway, that was a racehorse." And I said, "Well," I said, "he's done a lot of things that you guys hadn't done." And so one day, I pick up the Sentinel record, and one of the guys said, "I want to thank you for all your help." And Whirlaway comes from Oak Cliff. Now, he never run at Oak Cliff, but he was here because during the war in 1943, I was 13. And due to the gas restrictions and whatnot, County Mud had shipped their horses to the fairgrounds. when the fairgrounds were over, Ben Jones had a horse named Ocean Wave, so he brought his horse along to Oaklawn for the tail end of our meeting. And I said, I've got to go down there and I kind of see Orlo if I wasn't trying to protect me. She says, now, the first place is Mr. Jones is a busy man. You know, he won the Kentucky Derby 5 times. And says, he won't have time for a 13-year-old kid hanging around the barn, coming up to the barn. And she's afraid you'd say, get away from here, kid. And I said, well, I got to go try. And she said, okay, but I told you so. So I ride my bike down. And in those days, the old timers, remember, the stable gate faced Central Avenue. You'd come in right off of Central Avenue. And so I rode my bike up there, and the guard was named Smitty. I don't know why I remember that. But he said, where are you going, young man? And I said, I'm here to see Mr. Jones of Calumet. Is he expecting you? Well, sort of. He said, oh, in fact, the barn's still there. He said, go straight down and said, you'll see the equipment barn. And said, it's long barn, said number 2. He's on the sunny side, which is the south side. And don't ride your bicycle, you push it. So, anyway, be careful crossing the bridle path. So I'm pushing my bicycle, and I see, here comes the man on a white horse. And I said, that's Mr. Jones. Because I got several pictures of him in my scrapbook. I used to go down to the racetrack after school and pick up racing boards and clip the news stories and put in my scrapbook. And so, anyway, he rides up on this white pony, and he said, young man, so you looking for me? I said, Mr. Jones, I'm Holloway's #1 fan. And he said, lean your bicycle against the end of the building there, and I'll show them to you. So we start down the shed road. He says, this is Markel, so we hope she runs in the Kentucky Oaks this year. This is Nettie L. She won the Oaks last year. This is Ocean Wave. We brought him here for your Arkansas Derby. And so here's your hero. And he gets me a carrot in the back room and goes in the stall, turns the horse around, and I get to pet him and whatnot. Well, he tells me a couple of stories about Whirlaway. We're walking back up to Shed Road. He gets back on his pony. And so I get my bike, and he says, can I give you some advice? I said, yes, sir, Mr. Jones. He says, always listen to your parents. Get yourself a good education, but don't ever lose your enthusiasm for the game, which is the game of horse racing he was talking about. He says, don't be like me. He says, when I was your age, says, I was working for 25 cents a day, mucking stalls in Juarez, Mexico. And I have always heeded that advice, but I've always got a lot of good advice from people like you. I've got a lot of good advice from city elders here at Hot Springs. I've got good advice from officials at Oaklawn, and then a lot of people at Oaklawn, and a lot of people that really helped me, and all of you, and I couldn't make it without you people helping me. And I want to thank you. I am very appreciative of you, and I want to thank you for everything you've done for Iris and I. It's been a wonderful life, and I'm glad that I made the right choice. Living in Hot Springs and growing up in horse racing. Thank you.
We're going to turn around a little bit. His plaque is right over here near you.
Don Grisham, Thoroughbred Racing Journalism. The Daily Racing Forum's featured daily columnist for 34 years. 1988, honored by the Japan Racing Association for his contribution to international racing. 1962, honored by Ontario Jockey Club as a bright new writer in racing journalism. 1995, honored by Arkansas Division HBPA for contributions to racing. 2004, Oaklawn's Honoree of the Year. From Hot Springs, Arkansas, Don Grisham.
Yeah. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank you for being here. I know the day is kind of what it is, so a little chilly, but it's just so great of you to turn out. And I want to especially thank the election committee for this honor. And the thought, and I just want to say thank you. I wish I could shake hands with everyone and say thank you, but I am very grateful. Okay.